Hi, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nic Chaillan. We're going to be starting in about 15 minutes at 1 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for joining us. If you have comments or questions, or you want to say you're here and share your thoughts, please put it into the comments below. We'll be able to highlight you so we can see who is here and where you're from and what company you're with. Thanks so much for joining us. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is Nic Chaillan. We're going to be starting in about 10 minutes. If you have any questions, please put it into the comments below. And if you want to share you here and give your name and company so we can highlight you, please do that as well. Looking forward to talking to you in 10 minutes. Thanks so much for joining us again. Hi, everybody. My name is Nic Chaillan. We're going to be starting in about 8 minutes now. We'll be live at 1 p.m. Eastern. So if you have questions, please put it into the comments below. And also, if you want to share that you're here and put your name and company, we'll be highlighting you as well. So let's get started in about 8 minutes. Thanks for joining us. Hi, everybody. My name is Nic Chaillan. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to be starting at 1 p.m. Eastern. So, again, if you have any questions or if you want to share you here, please put it into the comments below. We'll be highlighting you as well. So, thanks so much for joining us. And stay tuned for about another 6 minutes. Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Please put into the comments your name and company so we can highlight you. And if you have questions, also do that into the comments below. We'll be starting at about 1 p.m., so another 3 minutes. Thanks so much for joining us. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. We'll be starting in about 3 minutes. If you have questions, please put them into the comment section below. And also, if you want to share you here, put your name and your company name and maybe your title on the comment, and I will be highlighting you as well. Thanks so much for joining us. Hey everybody, this is Nic Chaillan. We're going to be starting in about 2 minutes. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, if you have any questions, put into the comment below. We'll have a special guest today, but also we'll be taking questions live and share a little bit of insight about my last publication on the Financial Times. And we'll talk about also my longer version of it that's coming out tomorrow on LinkedIn as well. Stay tuned. Another 2 minutes, we'll get started. Thanks so much. All right, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nic Chaillan, and welcome to this first ever in the Nic of Time event. I'm excited to be able to share the logo and the name that you help us pick. Thanks so much for voting and helping us on LinkedIn to not only come up with a name, 3 different people actually came up with it, but also with the logo. Took a lot of iteration, and now we have this beautiful logo. So thanks so much for helping us. Today we're going to have a very special guest. We'll talk about a lot of pretty important, critical things around cyber and supply chain and bit of material and all this cool stuff. Meanwhile, we'll of course also take your questions. So if you have questions, please always put them into the comment section and maybe start it with a Q so we know it's a question. If you just want to say you're here and say hi, we're going to be highlighting you guys too. So please also do that and put your name and your title. Sometimes we don't get to see your profile. So particularly if you have your settings on LinkedIn, hiding your profiles, even to those that you're connected with, sometimes that happens as well. Like here, for example, with Mark, we can't see your picture, for example. So again, today we'll take a couple of questions, of course, but also share with our guest that's going to join us in a couple of minutes. First, wanted to remind everybody, if you want to know about these events and you want to join us and track the dates of these events, just register on the ama.preventbreach.com/register website so you can get those email notifications, so you can add it to your calendar as well. Again, like I said, if you want to put your name and company and be able to share that you're here, we're going to be highlighting you here below, as you can see now with Amir. So do that if you want to be able to share that you're here. Like I said, I wanted to thank you again for the logo and the name. It's now official. We're going to set up a lot of pretty cool gear, and we're going to have, mugs and different stuff, T-shirts and other stuff. So it's going to be fun for our guests and special contributors as well. All right. So a couple of information in case you missed it and you've been living under a rock maybe, and you've missed that a website of the FBI was compromised and used to be able to use their emailing capability to send emails coming from the FBI server. So obviously that's concerning, and that this kind of basic best practice in security when it comes to making sure that those APIs and those website capabilities are not capable of being used to send malicious emails. Clearly is not there. And as you can see, when I was mentioning our kindergarten cybersecurity, that's another example of that. And of course, you can imagine the impact that receiving an email from the FBI telling you that you've been breached, or telling you that someone is going after you and having names in there is obviously a pretty big deal. So as you can imagine, people are very much concerned to this day. And of course, those systems were taken down. But that demonstrates again the urgency and why we need to pay attention in our basic 101 cybersecurity principles and not just compliance requirements. That system was obviously accredited and passed the ATO and the RMF process, and yet obviously was compromised. So that demonstrates that compliance doesn't always mean security. All right, so another thing I wanted to share with you is, in case you missed it, my op-ed was out. It came out yesterday inside of the Financial Times. There's a short link here, but you can also Google it. You just Google my name in Financial Times. You're going to find it as well. And tomorrow I'll be releasing the longer version. It's a step-by-step guide. It's long. It's 12 pages. Of course, you can put that into the Financial Times. So the short version was sweet and just to raise awareness and create a momentum for the press and more TV engagements. But the longer version is really a step-by-step guide, helping and telling effectively organizations inside of DoD what to do and how to solve and to catch up with China within 6 months. It's very practical. Of course, it's using the 5 pillars here with embracing failing and agile principles, learn fast, don't fail twice for the same reason. But it's also about investing in our people and the workforce and creating career tracks. It's also about breaking silos and stopping redundant work and set up a joint enterprise IT office. And also about the information sharing and being more open about the risk and the threats we see coming from China, and enabling public-private partnerships, just like back in the day of Bell Labs, not just the basic stuff we do now with the AFWorks and SpaceWorks of the world, which are not bad, but not good enough, at not enough scale, and eagerness to deploy in production continuously multiple times a day, using the DevSecOps principles, and bringing DARPA into that game as well. And then the 5th one is really about accountability, but also about fighting the wrong battles and being more lean and really focusing on autonomous capabilities that are less exquisite large weapon capabilities, but more like cattle-like, something you can discard more easily and less expensive capabilities. So that's the way we think of it. And so you'll see that tomorrow on LinkedIn. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see that. But I'm also going to email the two links of the Financial Times and the longer version of the LinkedIn op-ed. If you're registered to the ama.preventbreach.com/register below, you'll be getting that email. So you get the links as well. All right, so now we have a special guest today. I'm very excited about it. So I'm gonna bring up on the screen Joshua here. Here we go. And good morning, good afternoon, Joshua. And just for people that don't know you, and I've been living also under a rock, do you mind giving us a quick intro of what you've been up to and what you've done? And then we'll start taking some questions. So again, if people want to ask questions to Josh or myself, make sure you put it into the comment section below. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, hey Nick, thanks for having me. Hey everyone, my name's Josh. I am the co-founder and CEO of a company called Galvanic. Previously, I was the senior director for cyber on the National Security Council. Before that, I was at a Y Combinator-backed cybersecurity startup in Palo Alto. And before that, I was a military officer in the Navy. Many friends I see on the LinkedIn chat from that time. Yeah, I'm here to answer questions, hang out, and it's great to be the first guest on your new show.
Yeah, you're the very first and the best, probably for a long time, but we'll see who can compete. So, Josh, when you see the cybersecurity posture we have now, and particularly when you look at the work you've been doing when it comes to industrial control systems, when you hear me say, we're at the kindergarten level compared to what I see in some of the most advanced, U.S. companies, how do you think we're doing in cyber when it comes to critical infrastructure and maybe DHS, DoD kind of systems?
Yeah, I think we have a challenge, which is that we're bolting on security to essentially human processes that have developed over decades, if not centuries. And what that means is, we just have a situation, a macro situation where it's just not something that people are forced to think about early. And that means they think about it late. And that means that they think about it post facto. And it means that they don't think about it well. And I think you're seeing that in some of the developments of some of the policy frameworks that have been developed and pushed out publicly, like CMMC and the various contractual requirements. Hey, Jason. And I just don't think that it's leading to, hey, Tyson. I just don't think that it's leading to an environment, a defense environment, a critical infrastructure environment that is going to be default secure. I think that it's leading to an environment that's going to be, that's going to continue to have security built in as an afterthought. And I just don't think that that's a way to do things that is going to lead to success or stability.
Yeah, and when you see the fact that we start connecting a lot of these systems, I was reading on the supply chain breach on the water supply in Florida, and apparently they were using TeamViewer to remotely.
It was. I heard it wasn't TeamViewer, but it was a similar product. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you feel about us connecting all these systems to internet, I guess?
Well, what I say to folks when they ask me about it is that we've taken predictable downtime and we've replaced it with unpredictable downtime. Predictable downtime meaning like humans that get sick or, machines that wear out or things like that. Things that, were maybe 4 nines of uptime, to use the sort of Six Sigma parlance. And we've replaced them with something that models as 5 nines or 6 nines of uptime. But the problem is those models themselves are built on, assumptions in the digital world that just aren't true. And so whereas you can model human error because, the insurance industry has been doing this for thousands of years, we can model the problems that we're going to have with analog systems, but we can't model the problems that we're going to have with digital systems. And so, you get situations like what we're experiencing now, whether it's like JBS, Molson Coors, many of these other scenarios that have happened over the past year, where everything seems to be running at a high level of assurance, and then all of a sudden one day everything stops, and there's no way to model that, right? There's no way that your insurance company is going to be like, okay, let's think about how we can model out your manufacturing infrastructure, and then just know that like one out of every 2,500 days, or 2 or 5 or 10 out of every 2,500 days, there's going to be some catastrophic cyber incident that means that your entire manufacturing infrastructure won't work. Like, that's not something that we have models for, nor is it something that I think we could really build models for. You're asking to model, unpredictability almost. I don't know how to describe it. Incalculable risk. So I used to play No Limit Texas Hold'em, and people would say, "Oh, why?" And I'd say, "Oh, it's the only way in which you can practice risk taking against an incalculable adversary, right? Like, every human's different, their behavior is different." So I think that de facto made that choice because we have these bureaucratic impulses to get to that like 5 nines, 6 nines of uptime, that 6 sigma, like, this thing needs to work 999,999 times out of a million. And we think that we've gotten that, but in fact we haven't. And in so doing, shifting from those frameworks that give us the 4 nines of uptime to the assumed 5 or 6 nines of uptime, we've actually introduced a lot more variance into the system.
Yeah, that's spot on. And when you look back at the last year of cyber issues we've seen on critical infrastructure in general, which one is standing out the most? People keep saying we're waiting for this Pearl Harbor cyber event. I would argue we had many ones, and they keep being dismissed. Which one to you was the scariest one that you've seen?
I think the whole framework's wrong. All these people that are like, "Oh, Pearl Harbor cyber," no, it's cheap thinking, and you shouldn't do it. It's like saying applying nuclear deterrence to cyber. It's just wrong. That's not how it works. That's how any of this stuff works. Yeah. All these people, what they're trying to do is create a linguistic framework that gives them authority, because they're like, "Oh, I've studied nuclear deterrence, therefore I can apply my mentality to cyber. You should pay me money and give me a promotion." It's literally just not how it works. And so, like, to me, I think about friction, systemic friction. And so, which one of the attacks am I most concerned about? I'm concerned about all of them, because all of them are introducing friction. And that's the thing that I care about: velocity, commercial velocity, manufacturing velocity, monetary velocity. If you talk to people that think about complex systems, the speed at which things of value move has a relationship to the value and the productivity of the system itself, right? Like, we used to think about like oil, right? It used to be that if you wanted to light your house, you had to go out and buy whale oil, and then someone would like refine that whale oil and then physically deliver it to your house, right? And that just essentially means that the oil industry itself had a certain limitation, right? There were performance envelopes for how big that market could get, right? You had to send a ship out into the North Sea, kill a whale, extract the oil from its body, bring it back, have it refined, put it on the cart, and the horse and have it delivered to the customer. And like that economy is only going to get so big. Fast forward, 200 years to today, where we have gas pipelines that run across cities, countries, continents. The speed at which that energy moves is in direct proportional relationship to the value of the system created. This is inherently the value of the dollar. It's that it allows value to move quickly. And so when I see these attacks, what I see is friction being imposed on very refined systems. And I see them as degrading that system as a whole. And so, the concern is all of them, because they're all aspects of the same complex system, which is our modern economy.
Yeah. Do you feel like there are some sectors that are going to lead to broader impact to people from every kind of backgrounds? When it comes to, I mean, obviously, power, water, oil industry, all these are essential. Do you think people care less when it comes to federal government stuff because they feel like the impact is not going to end up affecting them?
I think that the impact is going to be greatest in sectors where people have expectations of the delivery of the declared service. And so when it comes to the Department of Defense, I'm just not sure what the American people's expectation is there, especially over the past 50 years. Whereas with the oil industry or the energy industry, people expect their lights to turn on. They expect their stoves to work. They expect to be able to fill their cars up with gas. I'm just not sure what the expectation would be for the Defense Department. And I think that they're certainly meeting those expectations.
Yeah. And I guess we have a good question here from Brendan here saying, we can insure satellites. So what's the actual problem in determining the risk when it comes to other stuff as well in critical infrastructure, I guess?
Yeah, Brandon, it's a great question. The only thing that I'd ask you is what do we insure against? And I think in many of those cases, the thing that we're insuring against are known aspects of the performance envelope, right? So like, what are you actually insuring? And I don't know how the satellite insurance industry works, but I'll just sort of freestyle here, having looked at the insurance industry for many months and thought about starting an insurance company. It's likely that what you're insuring against when you insure a satellite is like launch, delivery to orbit, very specific things where the insurance industry can actually measure, like there's a statistically significant sample size, right? Where you can say, okay, humanity has launched X thousand rockets into the atmosphere and 0.074 of them haven't made it. And therefore, we will insure, this payload for, point whatever. They do some math, essentially with big numerators, denominators. On the cyber side, that's really hard, right? Because imagine if, Brandon, you and I wanted to take a bet, and that bet was, how likely is Brendan going to be today to get taken advantage of by a phishing attack, right? I don't have, aside from the fact that, and this is what Taleb calls the turkey fallacy, which is that a turkey grows up every day and thinks it's got a great life. Someone comes out and feeds it. It gets to walk around, thinks tomorrow's going to be as good as yesterday was. And that all, works until November 23rd. And so the point is that like you and I, Brendan, could do this insurance game where it's like, let's insure Brendan against ransomware. But things that I don't know, like what operating system are you using? What apps are you using on your computer? Are there zero-day exploits that are known but not disclosed, either by nation states or criminal actors for hardware or software that you're running right now? Psychologically, do you like to open links from email addresses that look like their Facebook, claiming that you're sister has an urgent message for you. Do you have a sister? It's like there's so much uncalculable risk in this environment that it's really hard to insure. In fact, it's been reported. We could put it up in the notes, but many of the reinsurance companies over the past month have started sending word out to their insurance providers, the people selling the insurance, that they're not doing any more cyber policies. And that's because it's really hard to calculate the risk. I haven't, and I looked at this for many, many months. I haven't found any good way to do it. Nor have I read of anyone who's found a good way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think most insurance companies trying to protect or insure against cybersecurity attacks are doing it in a very half-baked way, and I think it wouldn't scale. And I think many of them are kind of changing the way they think about it. The risk is very intangible. They start requiring a lot of different assessments and audits and different things, and then even that they realize, wait, the audits are just compliance checks, not leading to actual cyber outcomes. And there's a number game that I see a lot of them just give up on and move on. So
quick
I know
story on that. I remember
yeah,
I had a startup that I was at after I left the military. We went through SOC 2 compliance. And the most interesting thing that came out of that was I went and bought a new fire extinguisher for our kitchen area because we had to. It's like if you actually go through these SOC 2 compliance process, so much of it is just about like very, very simple, basic, important stuff like, fire safety. And so I would just say that like those things to me are like floors, not ceilings.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so we have another question here from Andrew. His question is, we see attacks on infrastructure all the time and general population needs to pay the price. Government is so slow in responding and using latest technology. In your opinion, how can new companies help the government without so many red tapes? I guess I can take it, or you can take it, or both of us. I guess you can start first.
Yeah, I haven't seen much evidence that there's an interest on the part of the buyer.
On the government side, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. You think the government is not tracking the importance of what these new best of breed coming from the commercial side brings to the table? They have no technical acumen. What's the
there's
blocker?
Lots of really well-intentioned folks that want to fix these problems. I just think there's this massive macro principal agent problem, which is that government purchasing decisions don't happen from policymakers. They happen through a process. And those processes are, written in the FAR or the DFAR. They're made by program officers, purchasing officers, et cetera. And I think that in many cases, those individual players just don't have the same incentives that like the senior folks do. I just think it's really, really challenging. And beyond that, I think it's really hard for folks to understand because government, quote unquote, is like really opaque. Government is slow in responding and using latest technology. So the point here is like government isn't a thing. Like there's no such thing as government. There are departments, there are agencies, there are services, there are state department, state level, local level. All these things are not the government. And so then the question is, and I would ask this of people all the time who wanted to come work for me at the National Security Council, like, tell me how you want to do the thing that you want to do. And it's really hard. And it requires a lot of specialized knowledge to understand that, in fact, a single random office has the ability to dictate X, Y, and Z. And the actual levers are A, B, and C. And the way to do it is 1, 2, 3. It's like, it's really opaque. So it's doable. We did a bunch of interesting stuff. And I see people doing things now in the current government, but I just think that it's you have to at the macro level try and align those incentives. They're not aligned right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Another question from Prescott here. He was working for me back in my days in the government. So hi, Prescott. I hope you're well. And he's now working with Jake, the Joint AI Center. And he has a question about the fact that, with Russia having 170 AI-enabled weapons and more coming from the Chinese, where do we see kind of the priorities needing to evolve when it comes to supporting more small businesses being able to develop, AI capabilities that are capable of transitioning and supporting weapon systems? Or will it always be up to the large primes? What are your thoughts there in terms of smaller companies, more nimble versus large prime contractors?
I'm not sure what that statement meant with the 170 Russian AI-enabled weapon systems. Like that, just to me screams snake oil. Like I'm just not sure what we mean by that. So I'd be curious to know what that means in detail, specifically, because I can tell you that with a wide enough aperture of AI, like I could probably define a whole bunch of American weapon systems as AI enabled. So if this is about, and there are a few very well-funded startups trying to sell what they claim is AI to the U.S. government, I don't know whether it is or not. I just know that very rarely have I actually seen real specific artificial intelligence, never mind general AI, which is a whole other kettle of fish. So I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the thing that we're trying to do? What's the system that we're trying to make more lethal? I always tell people, like, all this has to come back to lethality. And so, like, what's the thing that we're trying to do here? And then what's the best way to do that? And I always ask that question. So, yeah. Sorry.
When it comes to small versus big, what's your thoughts there in terms of enabling more smaller companies versus larger ones?
The DFAR is quite flexible. If you have a program, the people in charge of the program who are willing to use it in a reasonable way. I just think that it's a question of who's willing to take those risks and why. Again, it comes down to the alignment of incentives. And so there are plenty of small companies that get big government contracts. I think it really does come down to creativity. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, when it comes to my answer for this kind of question, obviously I think it's essential we empower small businesses, but for that to happen, they have to understand also why they would want to do this. And I think many companies walk away from the government because of frustration and lack of understanding, but also they don't understand the threat that China is really bringing to our kids. And I think if they were tracking maybe a little bit better, having access to more information, I think more companies would want to do business. I argue when I reached out from the government to some of these small businesses innovating in AI, many refused to do business with DoD because it wasn't their priorities, or they had other markets to focus on. But they were also particularly not tracking the urgency or the need to help us. I think they thought we were doing much better than we are. They didn't feel like it was important to support us. So I think there's a lot of education and kind of information sharing, and very much, back in the day with the Bell Labs during World War II, innovation days, that's gone, and that's really something that's missing now. So I hope that both on the government side and on the companies, we can kind of revive this and really create a very strong public-private partnership beyond just the AFWorks and SpaceWorks and so on that we know now. It's just not big enough. So,
Nic, I would ask, like, what checkbook were you going to spend out of when you reached out to companies?
Yeah, we have a pretty large cyber grant program in the Air Force. I think it's about $1 billion a year. So the grant, the grant with Cyber, I think is particularly exciting for companies because it's almost like you're getting paid to make your product capable of running on DoD systems, and really not trading off equity or anything. It's really just pure cash, and I think it's a pretty big carrot. We see direct to phase 2 Cyber's all the way to $2 million. That's not negligible even for a startup, and we've seen them being awarded in 3-4 months, 5 months top. So it's also moving pretty fast, right? I don't think you can argue that other industries are moving faster for a $2 million deal. I think it's a pretty traditional pace there.
But then the question is, what comes after it?
Yeah, that's the value of this was always mind-boggling to me, and really because we fail at making sure we enable the products to be authorized and ATO to be deployed in production, not just in the lab. And that's what Platform One was really focusing on, and kind of removing the impediment of the accreditation nightmare. And then I think the second piece that's really missing to this day is the lack of ability to introduce to key DoD programs, right? I mean, I had to myself sometimes make introduction between companies and programs like F-35 or GBSD or B-21 and so on, because there's just no mechanism for these DoD programs, program managers to even be tracking the kind of what's going on inside of some type of marketplace. So they see, hey, we invested in this, we're spending taxpayer money on it. How do we now put it in front of the right buyers to scale and deploy this in production? That's a very short-sighted process.
Yeah.
So I know we have another question here. If the federal agencies own and manage the systems, how would I think that might not be proper English, but how would I'm trying to understand the question here. Be correct to ignite the necessary changes that will generate expected improvement through innovation. So I guess what can the government do? Back to your point on the incentives are not aligned. I guess what, tangibly speaking, what do you think we need to do to align them, or what are those incentives? I guess.
Yeah, it's really hard. We have this legacy system that is built to do some very specific things. I think it does those very specific things quite well. But yeah, I mean, the system itself isn't. I don't think it's going to want to fix itself, because it allows for input, I'll say, from Capitol Hill. It allows for input from big players that stand to lose a lot if that system's changed.
Lobbyists, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see the incentives aligned to change it.
Do you think there needs to be, again, this kind of existential threat for everyone to agree and be like, yeah, we can't let that get in the way anymore, and we have to take action, like 9/11 kind of event?
I don't see it happening right now, and I think that threat exists.
Yeah, is it maybe not tangible enough for people to feel it in the day-to-day lives, or what, do you think people need to die for people to realize that this is important?
I don't know. Yeah, it's a little close to home. Yeah, I mean, the adversary doesn't want us to feel that way, and there are enough people domestically that are okay with status quo that I think you can articulate the challenge and try and build a coalition to change it. I don't see anyone stepping up today to try and make those changes. Previously, I think there were folks that were, but I don't see that today.
So you think the momentum is gone now?
I haven't seen the momentum maintain itself over the past few months.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could be just because I'm not seeing it, but I haven't seen it. So maybe it's still there, maybe it's not. I mean, I know of tools that exist that I don't see being exercised.
Yeah.
Maybe that means that different tools are being used. But you know, from my now limited vantage point, I don't see the elite being interested in actually doing anything.
Yeah. And I guess Joe here has the elephant in the room on, how do we best manage the conversation with the incumbents, who of course will do a lot to oppose the initiatives, and is there room to adapt the changes to create a transition, a human transition, as you call it. Um, of course, for me, when I started pushing DevSecOps in the department, it was very important to make it clear that we would not be succeeding with other large primes also jumping on board. I think it's very short-sighted to think, we're just going to magically show up with a bunch of, either government people, airman coders, small businesses, and replace, thousands or tens of thousands of DIB large prime contractors. First, it's not something we should be doing. We should really empower them to have the opportunity also to wake up and transition to this a new way of doing business. And I think honestly, when we put a little bit of a carrot and we also maybe add a little bit of a stick, I've seen many of them do it. What are your take when it comes to getting the larger companies excited about uh, changing the way they do business?
Yeah, I just don't know how to do that. I mean, those large companies have bonus structures, salaries, office hierarchies, leadership struggles internally, and so many complex aspects to them that I think it's going to be very hard to change the incentives of the game that so many people are playing.
Yeah, one thing I found that resonated a little bit, at least with some of the leadership, there was two main things. Is one, you can still be part of the game. It's going to be a different kind of game, but you still want to be a piece of it. Be a piece of it, and you want to retain your talent. And I think a lot of people start to realize, wait, we're losing all this talent going to Amazon and Google and whatever else. All these DevSecOps guys, they want to do the fancy, cool stuff. So we're having a tough time not only attracting people but also retaining them. And so I found a lot of the big primes, really lead the way when it comes to creating an enterprise DevSecOps office. And I mean, look, it's still anecdotal compared to the size of the organization. Don't get me wrong, but it's a first step. And I think when I've seen some of them partner, Lockheed announced they're going to be using Platform One for all of Lockheed, including non-duty work. They put a pretty large team on the open source Platform One Big Bang product and doing a lot of great work, to partner and at no cost to the government. I'm not saying there was no other intentions behind that doing all this great work, but it was also the best interest for the company to make sure they're still relevant 10 years from now. That was always kind of interesting for me, that some of these companies were understanding that, hey, we don't really have a choice. If we don't do this, we might wake up and have a pretty hard awakening. So
That's
but like
that's
you
great to
said,
hear. I was unaware of that. Lockheed and Platform One.
mhm. I mean, we have Deloitte, we have Northrop, we have, I mean, a lot of companies. Booz Allen, is a big partner of Platform One. We just enable the commercialization of Platform One, so now companies can resell Platform One and create products around it. Those models are pretty new. I don't think it's ever been done before, where the government created some type of open source massive capability, still uses it, but then opens, kind of create a reseller model, commercialization model, so companies can now take it and run and create products around it and contribute back to the ecosystem as a two-way street. I think it's pretty cool stuff. Don't get me wrong. Again, it's small, right? It's
Yeah.
compared to the how much we spend in DoD. It's a rounding error. but at least I find that the companies were willing to go and do it. Unfortunately, often we buy the wrong stuff with the wrong requirements, stuck in time, using waterfall principles, and then we wonder why the companies don't have the right incentives. I think it starts with also creating those incentives in contracts.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of this stuff really starts, which is figuring out how to write the right contracts. I've said this to any number of folks for years, is that putting those requirements, which even of itself, even changing the requirements is like a really advanced move. But I think that's where a lot of this stuff really, needs to start, is writing requirements in from the beginning for these major programs, minor programs, for security, for more agile development practices. Yeah, I mean, I just think, yeah, it's really rough, really tough.
Yeah. In fact, in my op-ed, the long version coming tomorrow, I have a whole section on end-to-end agile and a step-by-step guide on how to buy capacity of work instead of stuck-in-time requirements, with the definition of done, of proper delivery of the code into a government-furnished DevSecOps environment, passing the tests, the cyber scans, the user story acceptance criteria. So we have plenty of clauses that can be reused to be able to buy capacity of work, custom software, how to buy bulk licenses. So I mean, it's doable, right? It's just a matter of just doing it right. And I think your friend Jason and my friend Jason here have a question also about how do we move from compliance center security to something real, to stop measuring things that don't matter and start actually protecting systems. What's your thought there? I'll give mine after yours.
Hey, Jason. Yeah, I think we need to start firing people for negligence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, but
they were compliant. They did their job.
Yeah.
They did their jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's a rat's nest of a challenge. You need to start, taking a harsh look at these programs, whether that's, red teaming or code-based reviews or whatever, and then you need to start firing people when you find unpatched critical vulnerabilities, when you find like poor architectural decisions. Like the militaries themselves exist with the hierarchies that we have instilled in them, that we have injected into them. They exist because responsibility flows up. And I think we've forgotten that in this world. And it's like this temporal aspect of the fact that, like, I give you a tool, Mr. Warfighter. You take the tool. 2.5 years later, the tool doesn't work. You got to hold that toolmaker accountable. And I think that just because of the way in which we've architected our competitive strategies, like, we're not going to find out from the adversary for years, but we can find out ourselves. And so until we start that process of actually taking a hard look at the things that we're building and how, I'm not sure that we're going to even be in a place where we can hold ourselves accountable, because the system itself wants to just give everybody a pass and let them get promoted and put on the next rank. And yeah.
It's interesting because on the commercial side, of course, you see a lot of breaches, and I was assessing about, I would say, 300 products in my time in DoD in terms of cyber risk. And you have companies, like Atlassian, right, that has dependencies that are not updated between 8 to 12 years inside of their software. The answer is, don't worry, they're not in the code path, whatever that means. And you see dozens of CVs after CVs, 1,400 CVs on Jira alone. And yet it's a publicly traded company, doing very well. on the market right now, leading the market, despicable software best practices in terms of security, at least, and yet they get away with it. I would argue there needs to be a legal line by which this is negligence at some point, right? I mean, you can be incompetent to some degree. You can be underfunded and understaffed, and maybe your leadership is not empowering you. But as a company, right, when you're publicly traded, making billions of dollars, having dependencies that are 8 years, 12 years old and updated, and this big push, right, of the software bill of material by the White House to start mandating better practices, there might be a piece of the answer, because if there's more transparency on that risk. But again, when you talk to the leadership at Atlassian, they dismiss those CVs saying, well, we this is not accessible stuff, but they don't realize that all these CVs can overlap, and a malicious actor can use one to move to the other, and escalate privileges and laterally move across the system. We've seen it even recently, as 2 months ago, where this massive 9.8 scored CVE on Confluence allowed people to exfil data and connect to all the CI/CD tools and laterally move to other systems. But yet they keep getting away with it. So even the stock market didn't crumble. So clearly the incentives are not there, even for publicly traded companies. That's so I think at some point Congress needs to wake up and kind of define some type of line, where maybe you're right. Maybe, by the way, it's not just firing someone. Maybe at some point it's a criminal offense to, it's actually, I don't know, misdemeanor, felony. I don't care, but something scary enough that people will be like, wait a minute, we can't keep doing business like this. This is not. You wouldn't let a car manufacturer put cars on the road that they know have defects, right? I mean, we wouldn't let that happen. But yet, when it comes to it, software stuff, people get away with murder again and again. It's kind of mind-boggling. So, anyway, let's see what other question we got. Here we go. James here. Any thoughts on either better integrating cybersecurity into the government acquisition process or speeding up the process in general?
I'll take that one.
Yeah. Oh, I take it? Okay. Yeah. Well, I think, the acquisition process, I mean, when you look at actually all the way we have today to acquire capability, I think we have all the tools. I think the issue is what, Joshua mentioned before, is we don't use them. We see people scared of using them, don't know them. Either way, we're not using those, better way of doing business. We buy requirements instead of buying capacity of work. We do things wrong. So I don't think we can blame the system or the process. I think we can blame the people using the process wrong. That's a better way of saying it. CMMC and all this stuff is really looking more at compliance and control mapping again, and doing assessment. I mean, it's true that the self-assessment stuff was nonsense. Companies self-assessing themselves is a big joke. And so having independent assessors makes sense, although the issue now is who is making sure the assessor is competent and who is making sure the assessor is not biased, or what are the legal ramification of having companies showing up to audit companies when they could potentially be competitors, or at least work with others in a way that could look like there's conflict of interest, right? So there's a lot of issues there. Honestly, the easiest way when it comes at least to software in my field and integrating security baked in is mandating the DevSecOps compliance with the reference design that we created in DoD, where we have that baked in shifted left security, zero trust, behavior detection, software bill of material. And if people abide by this and follow this continuous, never-ending, software delivery mechanism, I think you're in a much better shape. So I would say just simply mandating. It's one sentence, mandating the full compliance with the DoD Enterprise DevSecOps reference design version 1.1. You already check a lot of the boxes just by doing that. So let's see what other question we got. Um,
And Nic, I would just pile on to your statement there at a higher level, macro level, and just say that like utilizing best practices, whether it's your reference architecture or some other system, just puts most companies so far above and beyond where anyone else is that it's like, how do we get better at it? We try to do well at it. Like that's the thing, right? Um, and I think that even identifying it as a goal inside an organization is something that I think gets you more than half the way there. I can tell you, I've had conversations with a bunch of companies in and around the defense space who don't even have a senior cybersecurity executive, like a person where it's like, you're responsible for this. Think about that, right? It's
yeah,
like,
and you see CISOs also widely understaffed, and all they care about is compliance.
yeah,
The certification process in cybersecurity. I'm on the board of a few of them because I was hoping I could impact change in these certification processes, but that never happened because it's designed to be effectively a pay to play concept where you don't have to do any hands on keyboard. That's what I appreciated always with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation and the Linux Foundation. You look at the certification of Kubernetes, for example. You have to have hands on exercises and do stuff to be able to get your certification. That really demonstrate an actual understanding of what's going on versus just like questions with ABCD answers. That is just not the way to do to know if someone is capable of. I mean, you can almost always guess the answer in many. I mean, and the threshold is so low to pass anyways that you could potentially read a couple of books and get away with it. So without ever implementing any of the stuff in real life ever, right? So that's a scary thought, and that's what people look into, CSSP and CEH and other certifications are what people look at now for picking, cyber alleged experts, right? So that's a scary thing too. And Joe was, adding on top of his previous questions, do we have case studies with metrics for improved built-in security? I have a slide on the software.dev.me website. I'll try to put the link on the chat, but effectively, there's a study where we saw drastic improvements. I'll bring that up on the chat. It's mind-boggling. It's not just anecdotal. It's effectively in the 1,000x improvement of that baked-in security. I have it here, so I'm gonna share a couple of numbers. Not only we see 106 times faster lead time from dev to prod, we also see 208 times more frequent code deployments, 7 times less failure rate, 22% less time spent on unplanned work, 50% less time spent on remediating cyber issues, but more importantly, a 2,600 times faster recovery, mean time to recover, and 2.2 times more likely for employees to recommend the organizations when they move to DevSecOps with the Platform One and DevSecOps engagement in DoD. So that's checking a lot of the boxes that matter here. So here we go. Another question. What do we think of the African proverb? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, bring everyone. What is the role of the government agency to enable the infrastructure? Thanks again. You want to take that, or you want me to do that?
Yeah, I think it's tough to, think in these sort of abstract ways. I understand what the proverb's getting at. I think, it's a great sentiment to have. There are a bunch of structural issues with the way in which the United States organizes its legal authorities. Who has the ability to force a private company to do what? You ask those questions, it's actually not much authority exists. You could ask, like, does the government have the ability to mandate people to tell the government when they've been breached? The answer is not really. There are movements in Congress and efforts within the executive branch, those being two separate branches, to try and move us in that direction, but it's very challenging. And so, what I always tell folks who want to get involved is you have to have very specific thinking. Very specific thinking. Think about one specific thing. So, like, solve one specific problem, and then you can keep pulling that string until you have one specific proposal. Keep pulling that string until you understand how to execute that one specific proposal. Again, we did this numerous times with executive directives, executive orders, implementation plans that very finely, at a fine grain, laid out what was to be done in order to solve a specific problem. But these big questions about, let's bring everyone along and let's secure the infrastructure, got to keep asking how. Keep asking how, because in many cases there's an unfortunate reality around, like, how to secure an infrastructure, and you'd say, well, you issue some standards, right? Okay, you've put a public document out, and they're like, okay, you've issued the standards. Then the next thing is, like, test for compliance. Okay, how are you going to test for compliance? Who's actually going to go out and evaluate the entities that are judging compliance? Like the parameters by which someone would be compliant. Huge fight over that. Then you're going to ask, okay, who's going to actually go out and enforce those standards? You keep asking these questions. And I think part of the challenge, at least from the operational communities in these places where folks are trying to actually deliver a service, the challenge is they'll say, like, we could spend an infinite amount of time trying to comply with an infinite number of regulations and still run up against some of these challenges. And so I just think that, as people think about wanting to solve these problems, I would just challenge folks here to try and think very granularly. Try and think about one thing and how it would be executed. It's really challenging. And you have to really know these systems, and the systems themselves are very complicated. I'm not trying to blackpill anyone. I'm just saying that it's like, the nice phrases, they're great. I love them. But you got to think through the mechanics.
Yeah, what's always interesting for me when it comes to go alone versus bringing everybody together and wait that everybody's there to move is, both of them are flawed, right? My answer is always, well, I'm going to lead the way. Even if I'm smaller, I'm going to show it's possible. We've done it, by putting Kubernetes on F-16 jets in 45 days when everybody said it was impossible. And then, the more you show the light, the more you get people excited, the more you create momentum, people will join and try to aggregate and do better and grow. I think that's the only way to succeed. You wanna start small, but precise and impactful enough so it's not a gimmick. People that start in DevSecOps, starting with business systems, I was like, no. We're here for the mission. We're here. The DoD does not exist for business systems. It exists for weapons. Mm-hmm. So we want to pick a weapon. We want to pick something meaningful that's going to get people excited, create the momentum. It was probably the hardest, use case, but just like Elon Musk is telling people he wants to go to Mars, he started at SpaceX very early saying, that was the intent. He didn't say it too publicly at first because a lot of people would think he's crazy. It was crazy, but that was his intent from day one. Mm-hmm. He said, we're going to land back rockets. That was like the allegedly holy grail. But it's been always just a mechanism for him to get to Mars. It was never the outcome. So you should probably...
I think your point is a good one, right? Which is that you set out a very specific goal, which was trying to create, in 45 days, a software payload that you could put onto a platform. And, like, there's a mechanism, right? The DFAR, all these regulations, the PEO, who knows what. I never worked at that level of granularity, so I don't know the specifics, but I can imagine what they are. And the point is that you have to very specifically identify a goal, understand the mechanics of what it would take to reach that goal, and then just methodically move through that process. And that's what I would challenge everyone on this, on this AMA to think about in your own organizations is like, complaining may have some utility. I don't know if it does or not. But proposing specific solutions and even the mental exercise of understanding what it would take to solve a specific problem is enormously useful, if only for you as an individual, right? Like, put yourself through the rigorous mental process of thinking about how you might solve something, right? And then maybe halfway through or all the way through, you'll be like, it's maybe not a good use of time, or maybe there's this intractable problem that I wouldn't be able to get past. But like, think through that, right? It's really useful. And then if you can, go execute against it, and maybe succeed, maybe fail. But if there's someone on this chat who works at Atlassian, it's like, think about what the process would look like internally if you put together a team, part-time, working less than 10 hours a week, 10 total man hours a week, that would try and eliminate 5 bugs off of that CVE list, and take it to your management. Be like, hey, we've got this big backlog. I'm going to try and take 5 of these off a week. Give me 10 man hours, and let them say no, let them say yes. At least then you can start to understand the organizational dynamics. And again, I'm just sort of talking about one specific, very small situation, but it's like, start to propose solutions, right? That's a really useful exercise.
Yeah, it's always easy to talk about problems, right?
Yeah.
I think there's another good question here on what are the most exciting software coming in the future for simplifying defense cyber for non-geeks and non-technical guys, I guess, but yet providing provable security. What have you seen, if anything, that gets even close to that kind of concept of defense security that doesn't require tremendous expertise? I'm trying to come up with one, but I'm I don't think there's much going on. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I forgot what his name is. I'm trying to find it out here. It was the there we go. Jim Barksdale. So Jim Barksdale, who along with Mark Andreessen created Netscape, used to say that there are 2 great business models in the world: bundling and unbundling. And so I think, what our good friend is saying is that, where are we in the process of bundling and unbundling? And I think, if you think about what engineers do in building solutions and operators do in implementing them, I think the question is, in various areas of cybersecurity, whatever we want to call that, are we in a phase of bundling, or are we in a phase of unbundling? Because there are a lot of great companies out there that do defensive type things, and the question is, how easily can we deploy those things out onto these systems, or do we need more things first? So I would just say, I think that in certain parts of that cybersecurity world, I think we've done a lot of unbundling, and I think we're going to get back more into a bundling place. But that's just me, and it's just gut feeling. But I could be wrong. We'll see. But that's my
I think you're probably right. I think also for me, when it comes to simplicity and efficiency, that's why AI, and not just gimmick AI, but real long-term, sentient, I guess, AI is going to be so important, because I think the real answer is to remove the human entirely from those loops and automate, everything. And it doesn't always require AI to do that, but I think if you really want to go next generation, I'm actually very concerned that I see some nation state investing massively in cyber offensive AI based capability, not just in like discovery scanning basics, but really end to end kill chain engagement. That's a very scary thought, because if they can automate and remove humans from the offensive side, to get into systems, and then even for humans to go deeper into those systems once they got in, that's a very scary thought. And so I think the defensive side, if you really want to get to that simplicity and that scale and metrics driven security, I think is going to have to be driven by AI and removing humans from the loop as well. But
yeah, let me also just say here, because a very accomplished and talented colleague of mine has just chimed in on the chat, Tyson, about the centrality of humans, of people, of talent. I do think Tyson's right, which is that workforce talent and quality is going to be essentially like the, I don't know how to describe it, like the multiplier. This is the thing. And I think that over the next few years, and he and I worked on this quite extensively on the National Security Council and in other places as well, organizations' ability to train and marshal talent against these types of challenges is going to be, a very big indicator of whether or not they'll be able to successfully overcome some of these challenges.
Yeah, I think also, we waste a lot of these key talents' time on the wrong problems. Stuff that could be easily automated is left to humans, where instead, if we are doing better at some of the basics of automation, and I'm not talking AI stuff, but just basic stuff, really, we could then use humans to do what they do best, which is the most innovative side of it and the more advanced stuff. And that's kind of a shame that we still waste people's time on basics of life, but that's what it is. There's a question here from Sergio on the CVEs and asking, all the companies not investing enough to ensure they have closed those CVEs. And this ties into the big question: what is a solution to the cyber problem? Continuously improving encryption and involving internet architecture, or something else? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, again, it's like a really big, I'm not even sure this is a question. I think it's kind of a statement.
A statement, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's a fractal question. Like, how come you're not investing enough in security? It's like an organization could pour its entire, budget into trying to, secure itself. I think the question is like, how do you strike a balance? And I would just say that, at the highest level, my complaint, my frustration, not even complaint, my frustration would be that the balance is being struck through process, meaning like people are building products and then they're thinking about securing them. And so if you can, pull forward the security, thinking into the conceptual stage, you can probably even that balance out a little bit better. Just my guess, could be wrong. There are better people on this thread who would have better instincts, but that's my thought.
Yeah, you talked about Atlassian, for example, when I think they told me to address the CVs. It was something like 100,000 arrows, something pretty insane. I mean, that's what you get when you compound, 12 years of tech debt, right? So, people just dismiss the updating of dependencies and, oh, no, you're stuck into that version of that dependency. And now you have plugins using that dependency. And, oh, now you need to coordinate with a bunch of other companies to update your plugins. And now you can't do that because you have all these companies being paid to sell plugins. That's kind of what Atlassian got themselves into, by not prioritizing it continuously. And, that's where the cost of tech debt can become really tangible. And unfortunately, now it's this massive, mountain of work that most people will be like, well, that's just impossible. But, back to your point, though, I told them, you could potentially take a bite And I have to commend a company that has done it. Cloud Bees with Jenkins, had a lot of CV, very scary stuff too. Very similar use case, compared to Atlassian. 7 years of dependencies not updated, pretty much. Lot of issues, but they put it. I put pressure. Don't get me wrong. I was pretty upset about it, just like I did with Atlassian. But I guess Cloud B is a little bit smaller, so I could put a little bit more pressure, I guess. And they got a lot of it, fixed, and they set up a 8 months plan, and bite at a time, and took it down, and it's doable. But I'm just concerned that we don't see this. None of the stakeholder. I bet if you ask investors of Team, which is Atlassian, right? The stock is called Team. If you ask some of these investors, they are not even tracking that tremendous risk that is that technical debt of the product and the CVEs. I bet no one even knows how bad this is. And so the fact that they don't have to report this inside of investor calls, and have that as a metric that's mandated to be used for publicly traded companies like this is a little bit mind-boggling to me. That's probably a piece of the answer is, making this stuff more broadly visible. I can tell you, when I posted on LinkedIn, got about 175,000 views on the LinkedIn post on Atlassian. You got the chief safety surety, I forgot, officer, comment and say, they're taking it seriously and stuff. Not sure if that led to actual outcomes, but I can tell you they paid attention to the views that they were getting on LinkedIn. That's for sure. All right. So next question. That's an interesting one, I guess. Back to your background also on cyber, why are red team allowed to set up within the organization grounds if they're testing actual security? It seems an unfair advantage to give to the red team an inaccurate measure of the result of the findings. I have my thought on that, but you want to go first? Or
I can't speak to any one organization's methodologies for conducting security assessments. I think that you got to pay really close attention to what you're actually trying to test for. So if some organization is like, giving a red team network access, maybe it's because they're trying to simulate post access, right? Like maybe they're trying to simulate what happens after a
lateral movement. Yeah.
Yeah. After lateral movement, after getting access through a phishing attack or something like that. Like,
which is very fair.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I guess
that's what's going to be my answer. That's what's going to be my answer. You stole.
Yeah. Phishing works 100% of the time on a long enough time horizon. So are you going to assume it has succeeded? I guess maybe that could be the thinking behind it, but having not been responsible for whatever theoretical scenario we're discussing here, I just think, you got to think through those things, but before you start spending money on that red team.
Yeah, and I think it's actually, it may look like cheating, and usually when you do a good red team, you do both. First, you do it from the outside, and then you do it from the inside. I would start from the outside first, and then go inside. But I always do inside because first, they're going to get in, and there's not just thing as a perimeter anymore with zero trust. You have mobile devices, you have different endpoints, connected cloud things. So they're going to get in somehow into the network, and so that's just a given. So having them from the inside, it's just skipping the step of getting in, but really that's going to give you insight as about the lateral movement that those malicious actor can do, particularly when you don't have a zero trust stack to limit that lateral movement. So I argue it is very important to do it from the inside, because that's what's going to happen pretty soon enough. And honestly, getting it is almost anecdotal now. In, like you said, with phishing and other means, people will get in 0 days, unupdated things. Maybe they're gonna get into your Atlassian and then laterally move into your network. So who knows, right? So I completely think it's completely fair, because that's effectively what bad actors are gonna be able to do pretty quick. The getting in piece is almost anecdotal now. In most use cases, right? But I always do both, right? So hopefully that answers your question. And another question is, what are the best ways to mitigate supply chain issues we are hearing about these days? What should the what should be the DoD's priorities in that regard? Do you want to take some of that? Another broad question.
Yeah,
Big stuff. I don't know.
little red flag there in terms of what we're trying to get at in the question. I
Yeah.
think supply chain is really important. I think we've had a bunch of incidents that have shown us that. And there's a lot of initiatives happening to try and lock some of that stuff down or better understand what the topology of the systems are that we're using. I would just leave it at that, especially from our LinkedIn user.
That being said, sometimes I have people that are connected to me that don't show up because of LinkedIn settings. So that's always mean it's malicious Chinese user or Russian. But I think when I look at supply chain risk, it's kind of first it's too broad of a question. Are we talking hardware? Are we talking software? You look at chips. You look at firmware. Why would China even bother getting into hardware supply chains, which they have wide access to, if they can just do it in a software-defined way and have that even more, simple and less detectable. So I'm very concerned about time bombs and the fact that people may be dismissing the fact that China might already be inside of many more systems than we think they are, but they are just not using those bridges until it's time for them to want to use them, and have that kind of time bomb effect when it's time to go invade Taiwan, for example. That'll be a good example of that. So we shouldn't be dismissing the poor state of security just because we don't see more activity. I think there's a lot of activity we just don't know about, right?
Hey, Nick, I got to go in 5, just FYI.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm tracking the time.
No, it's all good. Okay.
And so I guess if people have you have 5 more minutes with Joshua here to share any questions or thoughts you have with him before he has to go, and then it's going to be just me boring me. So all right, so another friend that we don't know the name of. So to our point about China being a risk, why do we think that dissatisfaction for the status quo must rise to a level that is quite literally dangerous to the nation before reasonable technological advancement overcome the resistance to change in government? Yeah, I think it's just people are complacent, right? When you win against camels for many decades, you maybe.
I'm sorry. Who won? Who won against?
I guess we won in a point of time, and then it doesn't stick.
Yeah.
I guess the camel came back. So I guess
song,
you're right.
The cat came back the very next day.
Yeah, that's true. And China was smart enough, to fight smarter and negotiate the mining rights to Afghanistan before they even took control back of the country. So, but I guess on principle, people at least felt we were winning until there was a hard awakening when we left. Although I don't know what we were really trying to win. That's if you don't really know, and that's my fear when I see the president have meetings with President Xi, with no desired outcomes. We shouldn't be showing up in discussions with China without a very clear agenda.
Business as usual, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know how people do that. It's just just a scary thought, because that's how we get into real trouble. Showing up with no desired outcomes. I'm pretty confident that any one of us that take meetings usually have desired outcomes, but apparently not the government. We just show up for the heck of showing up. So that's a little scary. But overall, I think my point is, people are complacent. They feel like we're untouchable, and they don't often realize how smart China, and they have a lot of hardworking people. Also a billion and a half people doing this stuff. So that's a pretty scary thought. They get more data than anybody else by either stealing it or mandating their companies to participate. We don't want to get there. And people, when I say that, people say, "Oh, you want to just remove all the values of the United States by going into a state with no privacy, and but that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying they have a big advantage here over us, whether we like it or not. I'm not saying we should do that, but the fact is they do. So, and so it's a scary thing, and you see it even recently with the hypersonic launch, where John Milley is saying, "Oh, it's almost a Sputnik moment." Why almost? Like, who decides when it's no more almost? Because to me, that's more than not almost. It's a Sputnik moment, and we just keep dismissing it, just like we call China a near peer adversary, where already it is a peer adversary, right? In many fields, and they have a very strong navy. They have very strong cyber offensive defensive capabilities. They have very strong AI capabilities. Hypersonic, China has done 200 launches when we did 9, right? So talk about numbers, testing, telemetry, all the gathering of data they do, and then meanwhile we have our kids on TikTok where they collect all the information about everybody in the United States now. So I don't know what it's going to take for people to wake up. We keep trying to raise awareness, right?
Fired.
Yeah.
I think people have to start getting fired. There has to be like real personal accountability. And I think until that happens, the system won't respond. Anyway,
I know you got to go, my friend. But we want to thank you for joining us.
In 6 minutes, just
Yeah.
get ready for it. But
and it's actually a meeting where you have a tangible outcome. So that's.
I do have a meeting with a tangible outcome. Take note. Take note. I encourage all of you to have meetings with potential tangible outcomes.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Me.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take more questions. I'm not going away until 3, so we have 30 more minutes. So again, if you have a question, put it into the comment section below. One more thought before we go, if we have no more questions. But the question about China here, right? Obviously aligned very well with some of the messaging I've been doing in the last 2 months about China and raising awareness. And so my op-ed is coming out tomorrow with a full version. I'd love to get your feedback. It's going to be a living document. So if you can give me feedback, see what we should improve, change. This is a plan that I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to come back into DoD at some point and implement, because I don't see anyone willing to implement it, unfortunately, fast enough. So that's my concern. Who is going to come and do that? So I'm being very precise. It's a pretty long. It's 12 pages. I know it's a little bit long, but I don't want to leave room for interpretation, because I know the DoD is going to create a nightmare of bureaucracy around it. So hopefully we're not gonna wait too long for people to wake up. I think my estimate based on the RAND study is that by December 2022, we're not going to be able to catch up to China when it comes to AI. So that's a very scary thought. So for people that are concerned too, I always welcome the feedback on the op-ed so I can make it better. Of course, wanted to thank you all for joining. I don't see more questions. So unless someone has a last minute question, we're almost at time. So wanted to thank everybody. I'm gonna say hi to a few people here. We have Gerald here. We have Patrice. So wanted to thank all of you for joining us, asking questions. The next event is gonna be in 2 weeks on December 7th. With someone that was here asking questions, Jason will be our second guest, coming from Second Front, sharing a little bit of his journey and the work he's been leading in the last couple of years. So we're going to hear about Jason joining us in 2 weeks, and I'll be taking more questions. The op-ed is going to be out, so I'm going to do a 45 minutes brief on the op-ed itself. So I want to share some thoughts, take more questions, and hopefully once you read the op-ed, you're gonna tell me your thoughts. What am I missing? What are the key things that we would be missing to catch up against China? And I'm talking really catching up in terms of innovation, software, AI, ML. Not we don't catch up against 1.5 billion people overnight. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to oversell the piece. Okay. But as always, really wanted to thank everybody. Okay. Please share the video, share the post. We're getting a little bit throttled by LinkedIn. They don't like too much talking about this kind of stuff. And wait, there's a question, so I'm going to take the question. So Tyson is saying, if we make it to 2022 without turning the corner, will you pivot from to advocating from a fight from a position of weakness strategy? Yeah, I mean, look, if we don't wake up, I'm not gonna give up, right? And then we're gonna have to fight a bit more dirty. Okay, we're gonna have to make it a little bit. Maybe we're gonna have to cross lines we don't want to cross. Okay, so I'm hoping we're not gonna get there. But the fact is, China is not waiting for us to figure it out, and they certainly fight not only smarter but also dirty as well. So unfortunately, sometimes that's kind of what we got to do. Okay. And that's what it takes to win. So again, wanted to thank everybody. I love to get your feedback on the next event on the op-ed. Okay, I'll be sending an email. So again, register. I'm gonna put the link one last time so you can see the link to register. So you can see get the notifications. ama.preventbreach.com/register. So please make sure that you do that, so we can notify you of those events. Like I said, we're getting a little bit throttled on LinkedIn, so we don't get as many people as we used to get. So thanks so much for joining us again. Hashtag Wake Up America. We have let's see how many days. If you go on the website on the ama.preventbreach.com/register, there's a timer, so we can see how many days we have left. 386 days left before we cannot catch up with China. 386 days. If that's not tangible enough, I don't know what is. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. You stay safe. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, follow us on LinkedIn. We always have a lot of cool stuff to share. If you need any help, you're looking for talent, you want to hire people, I'm always happy to post your job description. So the fact that you're looking for people. So do that. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, add me, and we'll help you. Okay. Thanks so much, guys. Stay safe and happy Thanksgiving. Okay. Bye-bye.